what would you say is the thing that leaders need to focus on that they might not be aware of? What's like the number one advice you would give them to succeed in the coming year?
Get curious about how to include everybody's experience in creating great, get aligned on what great looks like, and agree on the measures of what great looks like.
When everyone is in the party and it's amazing when you feel like, hey, look what we're doing, look what we just built, and it really feels shared. It's an incredible feeling, and definitely people will go that extra mile, and it's more meaningful than the money because you're a part of it.
It's never about money. It's about some greater purpose people identify with. And if they don't identify with, they'll take your money and then move on to something they do identify with. So it's compelling purpose. It is aligned actions, which is horizontal alignment, not silos. And it's about empowered people.
Dave, welcome to the Growth Stories podcast. So happy to have you here. So you're the Chief Navigation Officer at Garrison Growth. What's a navigation officer before we get into anything? What is that?
Jean-Michel, our business is about partnering with people to help them find a path for growth. Mm-hmm. And it's personal growth, professional growth, and results growth. And so I see the operation in our business as being navigating with people. So I like the title, Chief Navigation Officer.
Yeah, I like it too. And I see behind you, you have the buy-in advantage. So I'd love to dive into some of that with you. So what is the buy-in advantage in a nutshell?
In a nutshell, it is a series of lessons learned from successful companies that have figured out how to include people in getting stuff done. And that might sound crazy, but it's not, because if you look at Gallup research, whether you're looking at Canada, the US, France, Germany, Australia, England, doesn't matter. It basically says employees don't care. They show up,
that's true.
They do what they're asked, and they don't care. And so what we ask is, look, if you've ever been to say you go to a football game of whatever kind of football, Friday night in the US, go to a high school football stadium and look at the enthusiasm of the adults in the crowd, and then go to their same place of work Monday morning, and I'd ask you, what happened? What did we lose? Why don't we have people bringing their hearts and their guts and their soul and their enthusiasm to work? We don't have the techniques, and the buy-in advantage are the techniques.
I love it. I can remember just in my life, two teams where it was amazing, life-changing experience. We all still love each other from these experiences we all went through. And that was it. Every other team I've never found that. I'm trying to create that myself now. And I'm curious, what is it that companies do right to create the conditions to make these sort of teams where everyone is bought in and they are excited about what they're building versus, the companies that fail to create those conditions? What are some of the key differences?
Well, I would tell you the key difference is how people feel about their work and how they relate to the work. When we went around and interviewed hundreds and hundreds of leaders and looked at different companies, we found that there are a couple of key elements. One is you can go to any person in the company and ask them why the work matters, what we call compelling purpose. And every single employee can tell you in their own words, not what's on a poster on the wall, but what's in their heart. They can tell you why it matters. Second is they can tell you that their voice is heard in how things get done. People's voice is heard in how things get done. And the third is it's an environment of trust in each other and that sense of, and those are things that we're right now what we call a buy-in crisis. That's the result of people reflecting on what work means to them during the pandemic, a new generation, and new expectations about what people want from their work experience. And they're willing to give up money. At the same time, you have leaders saying, oh, it's just about money. It's just about money. I'll give them more money. Money is important, but that's table stakes. Money's not going to create buy-in. It's not about paying people more. That's a myth.
And likewise, it works both ways, right? You can't also penalize people. It's the same, it's the carrot or the stick. It's like the wrong axis to be looked, at least in my humble opinion.
Absolutely. One of the clients, we don't talk about this in the book, but one of the clients we work with sent to employees who left to their homes, hundreds of employees who left the company, sent to their homes a survey that said, just pick one reason you left, and then sent that same survey to their bosses. Now, what's interesting is when we ask a group of leaders, what do you think people said? Why did they leave? 100% of the leaders will say, they left for money, of course. That gets expressed in the great lie of, I'm leaving for a better job. People never say why they really leave. What the employees said was about half said money and half said my boss, and specifically communications with my boss. And so when I talk to leaders, I don't know a one that wakes up in the morning with the intent to drive people away. But what does it take? It takes time, intention, and tools. It takes training of leaders in what they can do to include people in how things get done, to hear people's voices, to hear their ideas and experience put to work the very first day they're on the job. And those are the kinds of lessons that are in the buy-in advantage that I learned from other places. And frankly, I wish I knew 20 years ago. I could have saved so much time and done so much better, but I didn't know.
I love that. For some reason, this is reminding me of sales. And in like the hand-to-hand combat of sales, when you're selling something, the moment you mention money, you're unable to understand what the real objections are. You know, once you suddenly now we've got fear and loss and resources. It's very difficult to say, I'm not convinced you can really deliver. You can't say that. You just say the budget isn't there. And it sounds like very similar things with people and their jobs, because the money clouds what is more important that,
So true. You know, I learned a really important lesson about sales early in my sales career, which was people buy an emotion and they justify it with logic, that you've heard before. People buy an emotion. And so we have a hearts and souls battle campaign that we have the opportunity to ignore because it's not on the balance sheet and it probably doesn't come up in your metrics at most organizations. So we can ignore it because it doesn't come knocking on our door, or we can say, you know what? My life and my job will be so much easier if I win the hearts and minds. And it costs nothing. It costs nothing.
Yeah. It does cost some investment, I think, in the leaders. You know, it does take a time investment, and it's intent. Yeah.
It's time and intent. That is the cost. It's a non-monetary cost, but that is a very real cost. And it's a choice. You can choose to do it. Once you become aware of the difference that organizations that have high degrees of buy-in and how much more profitable they are and how much more the leader can get done, then when you're aware of that, you then have a choice to say, well, no, I don't have time for that. That's a choice. Or you can say, wow, how much better would it be if this was just a great place to be and people were really excited about what we're doing?
Yeah. And, there's so many different management frameworks where this is a component. So I'd love to ask you about why this doesn't work. So I'm just going to rattle off some things that I'm sure you've heard. So I'm just thinking of, for example, the Toyota way, or like this flipped pyramid structure with the, line worker at the most important and everyone supporting them. There's different change management things, which I know you've probably studied them all, where you're trying to co-create. So it's not like the information isn't there, but at the same time, it's so rarely done.
Right.
Like, why is that?
So let's talk about the Toyota way. One thing about the Toyota way is basically people's experience are integral to that. So after their first week on the factory floor, they'll call people in and into a circle and say, what did you learn? What can we do better? So there's this continual, how do we do it better? Or if you have this pyramid with frontline workers at the top, CEO at the bottom, what do you do with that? And so that's what the buying advantage is about. And the model is really simple. If you want game-changing results, there are three components we see 100% of the time. And that is, everybody understands the compelling purpose, why it matters. It's never about money. It's about some greater purpose people identify with. And if they don't identify with, they'll take your money and then move on to something they do identify with. So it's compelling purpose. It is aligned actions, which is horizontal alignment, not silos. And it's about empowered people. Decisions made at the lowest possible level because everybody knows the rules, they know the objectives, they know the values, they know what great looks like because you've all agreed to it. So when you have compelling purpose, empowered people, and aligned actions, magic happens. It's nothing you don't know. I'm not telling you you don't know. It's how do you put it together and how do you do it?
Yeah, that's the hard part. That's the hard part, is doing things.
It's not hard. It takes time and intent. Yeah. Nothing hard about it.
And do you find, okay, Well, I agree with you on that because in some way, nothing is actually hard. It's just a judgment, you apply afterward. But, I can think of some frameworks where there's explicit like training and learning phases built in, like we're going to train our managers for this new thinking process. Do you have like, how do you get people from, okay, here's the action steps. How do you get them to start really, what's the word, have that consistency in applying them?
Sure. So accountability occurs when we hold each other accountable. This is not the boss saying, "Did you eat your broccoli?" This is we hold each other accountable. And this is what you just referred to. We're going to train you and then you're going to do it is what we call done to. And this whole process is the antithesis of that. It's done with, not done to. And done with means the leader starts with a self-assessment. Be honest. There's a free online self-assessment we have. Take your self-assessment and see where you think the organization is. Then, importantly, have your team take the team assessment and then compare notes. And be honest and be vulnerable and listen to what people say the experience is in the organization. Prioritize where you're going to start and just start with 2 things you're going to do as a leadership team and commit to. And that requires vulnerability among the leader, among the leaders and among the CEO to say, do you know what? I really think we could do better collectively if we tried something. Would you try this with me? And that's the vulnerability as opposed to, I want you to do this assessment and we will do that.
I love that. I love that. So, Dave, I'd love to ask you as well, just about, your journey bringing this to more organizations. And, a lot of people, hopefully the way they start the business is not the way it's growing today. So I'd love to hear a little bit about, how did you get your first clients and help them implement these ideas versus, what are you doing today to grow?
That's a story that would take hours, but I'll give you the 30-second version. So basically a couple of decades as a CEO in multinational companies and actually having high growth marketing oriented companies in technology and learned a lot from that. And then learned from people that I really respect that I was okay as a CEO. I was much better in helping people achieve full potential. And so they challenged me and they said, why don't you go do that? So 10 years ago, I vectored into credit card debt to say, what if I just worked with other people and helped them achieve their potential? Not by telling them what to do, but by asking questions and sharing what works for other people. And so that started to snowball with coaching clients and strategic planning clients and with leadership clients. And so today you'll find we do buy-in advantage workshops. We work with individual clients. We put out free tools. That's a big difference. We'll just put out a free tool. You do the assessment, read the book, everything's there. Listen to it on Audible, listen to this interview, go apply the tools. You do it or work with us or work with somebody else. But the point is there is potential. There is human. It's human. It's really a human waste. It's just like we're missing potential of people. We're missing what they could contribute if they were invited into the party. And so this is all tools to invite people to the party.
Man, I love that. I love that. And I know that feeling when everyone is in the party and it's amazing when you feel like, hey, look what we're doing. Look what we just built. And it really feels shared. It's an incredible feeling. And definitely people will go that extra mile. And it's more meaningful than the money because you're a part of it. So
It is.
I
We
love
call
it.
that collective genius. And so one of the things we ask leaders to accept is all of us are smarter than any of us. All of us are smarter than any of us. And without bringing the business to its knees and stopping, we have specific processes for how do you get every voice to be heard on important decisions? How do you get people to, how do you help teach them to make decisions? Telling them what to do or having them come to you and say, how do you want me to do this? And you tell them is not the way it's done. If you
Yeah.
tell people what to do
not
or tell them
scalable.
how you do it, right. It's like, well, that's what you did because your experience was years ago. And guess what? Your situations are never going to recur. That I can guarantee. I don't know what the future holds, but it's not whatever you encountered. But what you do have as a leader is a rich collection of experiences that inform your criteria. Your criteria is simply the checklist in your head. If I brought you 10 ideas, Jean-Michel, on how to grow your business, you'd look at 2 and go, those are terrible. And you'd look at 2 and say, that's pretty interesting. And 4, you'd say, I want to learn more. And you're doing that because you're using a filter in your head. So your opportunity to grow your organization is to grow your people by sharing the filters you've created, not by telling them what to do.
Yes, it reminds me of like military strategy. You have to know why, in case you can't ask what you're supposed to do next.
Correct.
Like, what are we doing, but why are we doing it?
Right.
Yeah.
Because when you're in the battle, you can't stop and say, wait, let me call headquarters and see what it is
Yeah.
we're supposed to
Should I go
do.
left or right now?
Right.
Yeah. Well, as as the workplace is changing, leadership is changing, expectations are changing. As you look to the year ahead, like as we wrap up, what would you say is the thing that leaders need to focus on that they might not be aware of? What's like the number one advice you would give them to succeed in the coming year?
Get curious about how to include everybody's experience in creating great, get aligned on what great looks like, and agree on the measures of what great looks like. And so many businesses, because look, I'm trained as an accountant, okay? So I'm trained to look at the P&L and look at the balance sheet, look at the metrics and all that stuff.
Yeah.
That is like driving down the freeway at 80 miles an hour looking in the rearview mirror. Those documents tell you what you did 3 months ago and 6 months ago. What I'm curious about is what is our collective intent and how do we measure success now, not from what we did 6 months ago. So what I would say is the opportunity for leaders is come up with a system, pick the buy-in advantage, pick some other system, but figure out how to get everybody on the bus, going in the same direction, agreeing on what great looks like, and distribute the workload.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Dave.
Jean-Michel, thank you for having me. Please check out the free assessments that are available and take the first step. It's not scary. It just takes time and intention. Buyinbook.com. Check it out.
Thank you.